I still can't trust people after what my best friend did to me. Danny and I were close our whole lives. We used to dream about getting out of our piece of crap town and moving somewhere where people had interests other than high school football and getting loaded. We graduated high school together and started saving up for our own place. Finally, we found an apartment. It wasn't a million miles away like we'd dreamed of, but it was in the city closest to the town where we grew up, and there was public transportation and culture and nightlife. There was something, unlike what we were used to. The apartment was a little more than we were hoping to swing, but together with both our salaries, we could make it work. It was going to be both of our first times living away from our parents, and both of us had strained relationships with our families, so getting out of those houses was a dream come true. I couldn't wait. And then, the night before we were supposed to move, Danny called me and said, "I can't live with you, man." I asked him why, and he started listing things. Every mistake I'd ever made, every flaw in my personality. And Danny had been my best friend since I was a kid, so he knew everything. He brought up every insecurity I'd ever had, everything that wasn't perfect about me that I thought he'd accepted anyway. There'd been no sign that he was ever annoyed with me, and here he was saying all the worst things that I'd ever thought about myself out loud. It was devastating. I hung up the phone, called the landlord to try to get out of the contract we'd signed, and then just started bawling. Financially, it was a nightmare. I still had to pay first and last month's rent on the apartment, and now without anyone to help me. But emotionally, it was even worse. I went weeks without talking to Danny, which I'd never done before, and my self-esteem was just completely shattered. Then a couple weeks later, Danny showed up at my house, my parents' house, because that was still the only place I had to live, and wouldn't leave until I agreed to hear him out. He told me that right before we were supposed to move in together, he'd had a breakdown and realized he wasn't ready to leave his family. He basically completely freaked out at the idea of living on his own and had a panic attack. He was too embarrassed to tell me the truth, so he made it my fault. He said he didn't mean anything that he said, and he couldn't believe he'd treated me that way. I believed him, and I so wish he'd just told me the truth. I would have been pissed, but I'd have understood. But there was no going back now. He'd given me a detailed, specific list of all my flaws and told me that they made me impossible to live with. It was all my worst fears about myself confirmed. I could never feel comfortable around him again, knowing that he was saving up ammunition to use against me the next time something went wrong. It's been 20 years. I haven't spoken to Danny since then, but I think of him often, mostly because I just can't form close relationships anymore, and I think it's because of him. I never trust that people aren't saving up things about me to use against me. I'm scared to let anyone see the real me because I don't want them to reject me like Danny did. I left that town behind a long time ago. I think Danny's still there. In some ways, so am I.